Now, I'm leaving this campaign, but let me promise you, I will never leave the fight for conservative values, and I will never stop fighting to elect principled Republican leaders to every office in the land.
Welcome back to America Decides. Former Vice President Mike Pence has dropped out of the 2024 presidential race, suspending his campaign, but says he will continue to push for strong Republican leaders nationwide. Joining me now on set here at CBS is Devin O'Malley and Rob Burgess. Devin is a spokesperson for former Vice President Pence and the managing director of narrative strategies. Rob is the former campaign manager for Asa Hutchinson and a chief strategist at Connector Labs. Great to have you both here. Really appreciate you coming by. There are those who are pundits and there are those who are in the arena. And you are two who have been in the arena throughout the 2024 cycle. You see it from the inside. At this crossroads for the Republican race, Devin, we'll start with you. Where does the conservative vote go from here, the conservative movement, now that your longtime boss and confidant, former Vice President Pence, is suspending? Where does that wing start to move in the coming weeks?
Yeah, well, I think what you've seen in the last week or so in the polling is that the race is tightening. Unfortunately, it's not the race for first place. It's the race for second place. And I think the inevitability of Donald Trump is growing. And the candidates that remain need to make the case to voters as to why they're the best alternative to Donald Trump. And I think at least several of them are kind of missing the mark there. And so we'll see how this plays out as scrutiny and the attention that Iowa gets increases over the coming months.
And when you look at former Governor Hutchinson, he's in the race still, running even though you're not a decide anymore, but he's part of the anti-Trump vote in the Republican field. Is that anti-Trump vote going to consolidate in any way around someone like former Governor Christie or another contender?
Right now, I think that's a hard thing to sort of look in the glass ball and decide, right? Voters don't seem to have an appetite to really coalesce behind one anti-Trump vote. But what I think we do need to see is more candidates do what Vice President Pence did and make a decision that's not only best for them, but best for the party as a whole, and say, listen, right now might not be my time. But we need to get behind fighting and supporting conservative principles, Republican principles, and find a candidate that can carry that standard for us.
CBS has been reporting on former President Trump's immigration position, how he's going to call for mass deportation should he win the presidency again. Does that affect the race in any way, Devin?
I think that there's a large cadre of voters out there that are skeptical of the promises that the president is making on immigration. This is a person whose entire 2016 campaign was centered around finishing the wall, building the wall, and he never did it. And at the same time that he makes these immigration promises now, he's promising to run as essentially a liberal. He's promising essentially a 10% tax in the form of tariffs. He's essentially abandoned any pro-life position that he once had over the last 6 or 7 years. And so this is a person who has wildly shifted his worldview and his policy positions, and he's failed to keep promises in the past. So I'm not sure why Republican voters would take his word for it this time.
So that's a point some people might bring up on a debate stage if Trump did show up for the debates, but the former president will not next week in Miami. So what are you watching in Miami when they're all on the stage except Trump?
I'm really looking for a candidate to put forward an idea that is really grasping conservative values and conservative voters at their heartstrings. They need to be talking about the economy first and foremost. We aren't hearing a lot of the boutique issues that the media likes to talk about on the campaign trail. We're not hearing about January 6th. We're hearing about the economy. We're hearing about paycheck issues and how the Biden Inflation Reduction Act has actually caused more harm than good. And so by re-owning that trust of the American voter and showing that we can win on economic issues, not just national security issues, that's going to be very important in this election. And whatever candidate can stand up and have that strong, unique idea is really going to sort of propel themselves into second place.
Speaking about the economy and spending, how do you believe Speaker Johnson and the Republican position on spending on Ukraine, on spending on Israel, how that's going to in any way bleed into the presidential debate?
I think the candidates' positions on Ukraine aid and aid to Israel are pretty well baked. I'm not sure that it has that much of an effect. There's not a lot, I think, that's bleeding over into the presidential campaign. I mean, in the sense that there aren't externalities that are really moving the race in any way. I think there were people or outside and pundits that were saying that what's going on in the Middle East right now is going to change the dynamics of the race. It was certainly talked about in the context of Vice President Pence and his expertise in foreign policy. And we just saw very early on that was just not the case. It's not happening. We
only have a couple of minutes left here. So quickly, inside your world, your top strategist inside the Republican Party, is DeSantis done, the Florida governor?
I don't think he's done yet. I think there's still time, especially when you're looking at Iowa, right? Iowans are really going to put the determination on what candidates are viable for the caucus when the snow starts to stick to the ground. And you'll see that, coming up here in the next few weeks.
A lot of time left, but he's got to run a pretty flawless campaign from here on out.
The Nikki Haley donor chatter for real or somewhat of a fantasy?
At this point, I think it remains to be seen. I think that they're foregoing Iowa for later states, and I'm not sure that it's the best strategy when the former governor of South Carolina is not polling very high in South Carolina. I think it causes some real challenges in the days and weeks ahead after South Carolina.
Haley gaining or not?
Let's look at Iowa. Let's look at New Hampshire. These campaigns, you need to win the first 2 states before you can start looking 5-6 states down the road. Solidify that momentum, either DeSantis or Nikki, get in a strong second place in Iowa, and we'll see how it carries you.
Do voters care when you're out there, when you're talking to them, listening to your candidates, former candidates, about Trump's legal challenges? Yes or no?
No.
Really?
No, not at all.
Not at all. It's not brought up at all.
Devin O'Malley and Rob Burgess, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.